Well, it's important, Sam, to note that the AUKUS partnership that we're announcing today is not about any one particular country, so that's really important for people to recognise. But more broadly about China, I think it's just clear that it represents a systemic challenge to us and the world order. It's a country with fundamentally different values to ours, and its behaviour over the past few years has been concerning. More authoritarian at home, more assertive overseas, and we are aligned with our allies, the US, Australia and others, in how we perceive China. And in that light, it's right that we do what is necessary to stand up for our values and to keep us safe. For example, recently we blocked investment in a sensitive sector of our economy in semiconductors. That's an example of the things that we will need to do, and I'll always do what's required to keep us safe.
But this is about the UK and the US helping Australia, which is on the Pacific, on the doorstep of having to deal with the challenges of China. You can't claim this isn't about the rising threat of China.
No, it's not about any one particular country, and this partnership represents something much bigger, in fact. This is almost an unprecedented multilateral defence partnership between three allies who share the same values. And what we're building is the next generation of attack submarines, where there'll be world-beating technology that we will be able to share with each other and learn from each other on. And those submarines will be interoperable, not just in the Pacific, but in the Atlantic and around the world. And that will help improve our collective security whilst creating thousands of jobs as well.
How does it make sense, turning to the integrated review, how does it make sense to invest in submarines when there are some that say that the army is broken and we are at war in Europe?
Well, taking a step back, let's look at defence spending in the round. As Chancellor, I announced the largest uplift to defence spending since the end of the Cold War. Since then, we've added to that every year. £5 billion more funding announced today to support our fantastic armed forces, with an ambition to go even higher over time. Why are we doing that? We're doing it because the world has become more volatile, the threats to our security have increased, and it's right that we as a government, me as Prime Minister, invest appropriately to keep us safe. So that's what we're doing. But ultimately, how we spend that money is something that our military chiefs, they're the experts about figuring out what the right capabilities are to keep us safe. But the main message is more money for our armed forces, because the world has become more dangerous and we need to do more to keep ourselves safe, and that's what we're doing.
Now, you're here in California. There's a hell of a lot going on back in London. A near bank collapse, the BBC's been in meltdown, and then there's the misery of strikes. Now, clearly, the lesson of this weekend is when your government wants to do something quickly, as it did with Silicon Valley Bank, it can pull out all the stops and solve problems. But we've had the misery of strikes for months. Why hasn't your government still got a grip on that?
Well, I'm grateful to the unions that have come in to have dialogue with the government, and our message throughout has always been consistent. We've wanted to find a way through this to resolve industrial action, but we need to do that on terms which are fair, which are responsible, as we want to bring down inflation, and that are affordable for the taxpayer. Now, we're having good constructive dialogue. I don't want to preempt that, but I am grateful to those unions that are in and having those conversations. We've seen progress on the rail side. We're making progress with nurses and other healthcare workers. I'm disappointed to see the action by junior doctors. I would urge them and the teachers to come in and have talks with the government in the way that other unions have done, and I'm confident that we can find a way through this.
You've got a budget this week. You could just put more money in order to raise the salaries of key workers. Do some people look at you and wonder if you were experiencing the misery of many, of millions, having kids staying at home because of teachers striking, unable to get into work because of the rail strikes? Maybe you'd take this issue and go a bit further with the amount of money you're prepared to spend?
Well, I don't think it's right that there's so much disruption being caused to working families' lives. That's why I, as Prime Minister, introduced new laws to have minimum safety levels in our critical public services, like rail, like education, like healthcare. It's precisely because I do think people should not be able to have that disruption impact their lives that I'm putting that new law through Parliament. And look, the biggest thing on people's minds at the moment is the cost of living. And in me as Prime Minister and as Chancellor, they've got someone who put a new windfall tax on the energy companies, used that money to help reduce their energy bills by £1,000, because I know that was the priority. It should demonstrate to people that I'm on their side. What's my number one priority out of my 5? To halve inflation, ease the burden on the cost of living, and that's what we're going to deliver.
So in that budget this week, the Chancellor in his autumn statement was criticised for not having enough of a vision for growth. Can you confirm that come the time of the next election, Jeremy Hunt will still be Chancellor?
Yeah, of course. At the beginning of the year, I set out 3 economic priorities out of my 5 for the country is to halve inflation, to grow the economy and to reduce debt. And the budget will deliver on all of those things. Right? We want to keep bringing the cost of living down for people. We're on track to do that. That's why we've got to stick to the plans. That's why it's important that we get public sector pay settlements right. It's why it's important that we reduce debt, make sure that we're not passing on burdens to the next generation. That also helps us combat inflation and keeps interest rates low. And we've seen some of the damage that higher interest rates are causing in particular banks at the moment. And we want to grow the economy because that's the best way to provide jobs for people around the country. That's what the Chancellor's going to deliver on Wednesday. That's what the government is going to deliver, and people should feel confident that we've already brought about enormous improvements since I took over at the end of last year.
Finally, Prime Minister, you were very quick in the autumn to condemn Matt Hancock when he went on a TV programme, The Other Side of the World, and earned lots of money for it. I just wonder whether you have any discomfort about the extraordinary outside earnings of Boris Johnson. He made £3.7 million in just 6 weeks. Do you feel uncomfortable with the amount of money he's making, the amount of work he's doing outside of Parliament, or is he just too big a political figure to criticise?
No, I mean, ultimately, these are going to be decisions that individual MPs make. There's lots of different ways that MPs combine what they're doing in Parliament and the other things that they pursue. It's right that there's balance in that. It's right that they're able to represent their constituents. There's a set of guidelines in place for this that come from Parliament itself, not from government, and it's right that they are adhered to.
Why do you criticise Matt Hancock but not Boris
I think
Johnson?
there's a difference between physically unable to fulfil your job in the UK if you're abroad for a prolonged period of time and being able to do other things alongside it. I think most people appreciate there is a difference there. But look, it's not about individual people. My general view, as I've always said, is that MPs' primary responsibility should be to serve their constituents. That is what they are elected to do, and their constituents, wherever they are, whichever party they're from, will always hold them accountable for doing that.